He had always liked music, even when he was too young to understand what made it so special. In his small home, the sound of music usually came from an old radio that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. Whenever a piano piece played, he would stop whatever he was doing and listen, even if it was just for a few seconds. Something about the sound pulled him in, even though he had never touched a piano in his life. His family did not have much, so buying a real piano was out of the question. Lessons were even further out of reach. Still, he kept wishing, quietly, day after day. He never told anyone about it. It felt like a dream too big for someone like him. One afternoon, while helping his mother clean a storage room where she worked, he found a dusty old keyboard lying in a corner. It had scratches, some keys were faded, and the power cord was taped up in several places. His mother noticed how long he stared at it. She asked the owner if they were throwing it away. The owner nodded and said it didn't work very well anymore. His mother smiled softly and asked if she could take it home. They agreed. That evening, she surprised him with it. He stared at the keyboard like it was a treasure. Even though it looked worn out, it was the closest thing to a piano he had ever had. He plugged it in and hoped it would work. To his joy, the keys lit up, and although the sound was a bit uneven, it played Dot with no idea where to begin. He sat on the floor with the keyboard in front of him. He placed his fingers on the keys and pressed gently. The notes didn't sound like music yet, but he felt excited anyway. Then he had an idea. He reached for the old phone his mother had passed down to him and opened YouTube. He typed, "How to play piano for beginners." Within seconds, dozens of videos appeared. Some were long, some were short, and almost all had friendly voices explaining what to do. He picked one and began following along. He didn't understand everything at first. His hands felt awkward, like they didn't belong to him. He pressed the wrong keys again and again. But he didn't stop. Every mistake made him want to try again. Soon this became his nightly habit. After his school homework was done, after his family had settled down, he would sit with his old keyboard and learn from YouTube. His mother would peek into his room and smile when she saw how focused he was. She didn't always understand the music, but she understood the look on his face Hope Dot at the beginning. He learned simple things: how to sit, how to place his hands, how to press lightly instead of hitting the keys. Then he learned scales. He practiced them over and over, even though they sounded boring. His fingers would get tired, but he kept moving them because each small improvement made him feel proud. Sometimes his relatives would visit and ask why he was wasting so much time on a broken keyboard. Some of them even laughed and said no one learned piano from YouTube. Their words stung, but he didn't argue. He simply waited until the house was quiet again and went back to practicing Dot. As weeks passed, something began to change. His fingers moved more smoothly. He could play simple melodies without looking at the screen every second. He started recognizing patterns in songs he heard on the radio. He began to understand how music worked, little by little. One night, after many tries, he played a short piece from memory for the first time. When the last note faded, he sat still in the silence. A slow smile formed on his face. He finally felt like he was touching the dream he had always kept hidden. The keyboard became his closest friend. He practiced when he was happy, when he was tired, and even when he felt discouraged. The more time he spent with it, the more he realized that music wasn't just something he liked, it was something he needed. But not everything came easily. Some lessons online were too fast. Some explanations confused him. Sometimes the keyboard malfunctioned, making strange buzzing noises or skipping sounds. He would switch it off, wait a few minutes, and try again. He didn't complain. He simply adapted. There were nights when he fell asleep at the keyboard, only to wake up with faint marks from the keys on his arms. There were days when he wished he had a real teacher to guide him. But whenever these thoughts overwhelmed him, he watched another video, reminding himself that many people had learned things from the internet. If they could learn, so could he. One morning at school, he heard a group of students talking about a talent show. They were laughing as they listed who would sing, who would dance, and who would try something funny to entertain the crowd. When they noticed him listening, one of them asked jokingly, "Are you going to play piano? You don't even have real lessons." The others laughed. The comment stayed with him for days. Not because it hurt, but because it made him think. Could he actually perform in front of people? Could he play well enough? At night, he looked at his keyboard, uncertain. His hands hovered over the keys, but didn't press. His confidence wavered. His mother noticed his silence and asked him what was wrong. He told her about the talent show and how others joked about him. She listened patiently and then told him something simple. You don't need anyone's permission to follow what you love. If you want to try, then try. If you don't want to, that's okay too. But don't let their words decide for you. Those words stayed with him. That night, he opened a new tutorial about performing with confidence. The speaker explained how mistakes are part of learning, how every musician starts somewhere, and how practice gives courage. He watched the video twice and turned to his keyboard. He played slowly at first, and with more feeling. He imagined himself on a stage, lights shining, audience watching. His palms got sweaty, even thinking about it, but he kept going. He practiced the same piece again and again, until he could play it without stopping. He didn't sign up for the talent show, not yet. But something inside him shifted. He realized that even if people laughed, it didn't erase the hours he had spent learning. It didn't erase the joy he felt when he played. It didn't erase the dream that had been growing quietly inside him. Days turned into weeks, and he continued practicing every day. Sometimes his friends came over and listened without jokes. One even said, "You're getting good." It wasn't said in a big way, but it meant a lot. The more he watched YouTube tutorials, the more he discovered about music. He learned about chords, rhythm, and how to express emotion through sound. Some nights he played softly, almost in a whisper. Other nights he played with power, letting out everything he felt. His world was still small, just a boy, a worn-out keyboard, and a small room, but his dream was growing bigger. He didn't know where all this practice would lead. He didn't know if he would ever stand on a real stage or play on a real piano. But he knew one thing for sure. He was not going to stop. He had started with nothing, but now he had something precious, a purpose. And even though the world around him didn't see it yet, he felt something beginning inside him, something strong and unstoppable. Like the first quiet note of a song that would one day grow into something unforgettable. He didn't realize it yet, but this simple beginning, this old keyboard, these YouTube videos, these late-night practices would become the foundation of a journey no one expected. Not his friends, not his family, not even him. But for now, he kept practicing, unaware that the world would one day hear the music he was slowly learning to create. He didn't notice how much he had changed in the months of practicing. What started as clumsy playing had grown into something that sounded almost like real music. Still, he knew he was far from perfect. Every day brought a new challenge, notes he couldn't reach, rhythms that didn't flow right, or lessons that seemed too advanced. But he kept going. He always kept going. School was the same as usual. Classes, homework, noise, and the same faces walking through the halls. Most people didn't know he played the piano at all. They saw him as the quiet student who rarely spoke unless necessary. That was fine with him. He didn't mind staying unnoticed. But one day, during morning announcements, a teacher mentioned something that made his heart jump. It was a reminder about the upcoming school event, the small annual show where students performed whatever talent they had. Last year, he had watched others sing and dance while he sat in the back row. The idea of performing back then felt impossible. This time, though, the thought weighed on his mind differently. He had been practicing almost every night. He had learned so much. Maybe he wasn't good enough yet to amaze anyone, but he wasn't the same beginner who barely knew how to press keys. Still, doubt clung to him like a shadow. When he thought about performing, his hands tightened. He kept imagining himself on stage, only to freeze under the lights. He pictured people laughing again, the way they did when they found out he learned from YouTube. He tried to push the thought away, but it kept returning. Later that day, he sat alone on a bench during break. 2 students walked by, talking loudly about the show. One said he planned to do a comedy act. The other said he might not join because he didn't want to embarrass himself in front of the whole school. The boy listened quietly. If even confident students felt nervous, what chance did he have? That night, after finishing homework, he turned on his keyboard. His fingers rested on the keys, but he didn't play. The same question repeated in his head. Should I try? Should I even think about something like this? He opened YouTube and typed in a new search: how to deal with stage fear. He found videos of people talking about being afraid of performing, stories of musicians who used to shake before going on stage. He realized fear wasn't strange. It was normal. He closed the video, took a deep breath, and began practicing. He chose a song he loved, one he'd been working on for weeks. It wasn't too easy or too hard. It flowed gently, rising and falling like a quiet conversation. As he played, he imagined an audience. He imagined being calm, sitting in front of the keyboard, letting the notes speak for him. He imagined taking a deep breath and trusting his hands. For a moment, it felt possible. The next day at school, a group of classmates gathered near a classroom door. He heard one of them mention his name. He paused, unsure whether to walk away or continue. When they noticed him, one called out, "Hey, someone said you've been learning piano from videos. Is that real?" Their tone wasn't cruel, but it wasn't friendly either. He stared at them for a moment, unsure what to say. Finally, he nodded. Another student laughed lightly, not harshly, just amused. "YouTube piano? That's new. Can you actually play something?" He felt his chest tighten. His palms grew warm. He opened his mouth but didn't answer. "Relax. We're just asking," someone added. He wanted to explain, to say that he practiced every night, that he cared deeply about music, that he wasn't doing this for attention. But the words didn't come out. Instead, he just shook his head and walked away. Behind him, he heard quiet whispers and a few small laughs. They weren't trying to hurt him, not intentionally, but the effect was the same. During lunch, he sat alone again. A soft breeze blew across the schoolyard. He watched others talk, laugh, play games, and share food. For a moment, he wondered why he cared so much about what people thought. He wasn't learning for them. He wasn't practicing for applause. He was doing all this because music made him feel alive. Still, the doubt lingered. That evening, his mother noticed he looked troubled. She sat beside him while he plugged in his keyboard. "Something on your mind?" she asked. He hesitated. He didn't want to worry her, but she waited patiently. So he finally told her about the students at school, about the comments, and about how unsure he felt about performing. She listened to every word, then gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "People laugh at things they don't understand," she said. "But you understand what you feel. You understand how much you've grown. You should be proud of that. Don't let a few voices stop you from doing what you love." Her words didn't magically solve everything, but they settled in his heart like a warm light. When he started practicing, something felt different. He wasn't playing to prove anything. He wasn't playing to compete with anyone. He was playing because it comforted him. The notes filled the room with a calm he hadn't felt earlier that day. The next morning, he saw the sign-up sheet for the school event again. Students crowded around, writing their names on different lines, singing, dancing, magic tricks, poetry. He stood nearby, pretending to check the board for something else. His hands felt heavy. His heart beat faster. He reached for the pen, then pulled back. He walked away, but the whole morning he couldn't stop thinking about it. His mind kept pulling him back to that moment, his hand hovering over the paper, fear holding him still. At lunch, he walked to the sign-up board again. This time, fewer students were around. He stared at the empty space under instrumental performance. It reminded him of how empty he felt when he let fear make decisions for him. Very slowly, he wrote his name. His handwriting came out shaky, but the moment he lifted the pen, he felt both terrified and strangely proud. He did something he never imagined he would do. He walked to class with a pounding heart. What if people laughed? What if he made mistakes? What if he froze on stage? But then he thought about all those nights he spent practicing alone. He thought about the quiet joy he felt while playing. He thought about how much he wished he could share that feeling with someone. Just once. Over the next few days, he practiced harder than ever. Every free moment he had, he played. Some notes still came out wrong, but he treated mistakes as a natural part of the process. One afternoon, a teacher walked past the music room where students could practice. The door was slightly open. She paused, hearing someone play a soft, gentle melody. She didn't recognize the style. It didn't sound like something from the school music books. It felt raw and emotional. Curious, she peeked inside and saw him sitting with his old keyboard. His body was relaxed, his eyes half-focused, and his fingers danced lightly across the keys. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened. When he finished, she gently knocked on the door. He turned quickly, startled. "That was lovely," she said with a warm smile. He blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments were rare. "I didn't know you played," she added. He hesitated, then told her he was self-taught, using online videos. Instead of laughing or doubting him, the teacher seemed impressed. "That takes a lot of dedication," she said. "Keep going. You have something special." Her words stayed with him long after she left. On the evening before the school event, he could hardly sleep. His stomach felt tight, and his thoughts kept spinning. He tried playing his keyboard again, but his fingers kept slipping. Finally, he turned everything off and sat quietly in the dark. He whispered to himself, "I will just try my best. That's all I can do." The next morning, the school buzzed with excitement. Students carried costumes, props, and instruments. Laughter filled the halls. Teachers checked schedules. The gym was decorated with lights and banners. Backstage, waiting for his turn, he felt like his heart was trying to escape his chest. He watched the other performers and tried to calm down. A student who was juggling dropped all the balls and panicked. The audience laughed kindly, not mockingly. The juggler laughed too and tried again. Seeing that gave him a tiny bit of comfort. When his name was finally called, he froze for a second. A teacher gently nudged him. "You're ready," she whispered. He stepped onto the stage. The lights made it hard to see the audience, which helped a little. His hands trembled as he sat down at the keyboard. For a moment, he forgot everything, the notes, the rhythm, even how to breathe. Then he took a slow inhale and placed his fingers on the keys. The first note was soft and shaky. The second was better. By the time he reached the middle of the piece, something shifted. He forgot about the audience. He forgot about the comments. He forgot about being judged. All he felt was the music. The melody flowed, gentle and sincere. For the first time, he wasn't practicing alone in his room. He was sharing what he loved with others. When he finished, the gym was quiet for a heartbeat. Then people began to clap. Not loudly, not wildly, but warmly, as if they understood the courage it took for him to sit on that stage. He stood slowly, his face warm with surprise. He didn't win anything that day. There were no trophies or special mentions. But something more important happened. For the first time in his life, he felt seen. And he realized something he would carry with him forever. He didn't need perfection, that he only needed the courage to try. He didn't expect anything to change after the school event, but life has a way of surprising people when they least expect it. The applause he received wasn't loud or overwhelming, yet it had planted something inside him, a thought that maybe, just maybe, he could go further than he once imagined. Over the next week, things felt different at school. A few classmates who rarely spoke to him before now greeted him in the hallways. One student even asked if he could teach a simple melody. Another said they liked the piece he played, even if it was short. The boy didn't know how to react. He wasn't used to people noticing him. He smiled politely, but continued living quietly, the same as always. Still, a small part of him felt lighter. One afternoon, while he was heading home, he passed by a poster taped on a wall near the school entrance. It announced a regional music competition happening in a nearby community center. Anyone could participate, regardless of age or training. The poster said the goal was to encourage young talent. He stopped and read the details twice. His chest tightened. A competition? That was a completely different world. It wasn't like playing in a school gym for familiar faces. Competitions were for real musicians, people who trained properly, who knew music theory, who had played on real pianos. He shook his head and tried to walk away, telling himself it wasn't for him. But something stopped him. A quiet voice inside whispered that it might be worth trying. That evening, after finishing dinner, he brought up the topic with his mother. She listened calmly, without interrupting. "Do you want to participate?" She asked. He wasn't sure. He wanted to, but the fear was bigger. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't think I'm good enough." His mother smiled gently. "You'll never know unless you try." Her encouragement warmed him, but the fear stayed. Still, he looked up the competition online that night. Videos from previous years showed children confidently playing classical pieces on shining grand pianos. Their hands moved quickly, their posture perfect. They looked like they had been trained for years. He felt his confidence crumble. He turned off the videos and lay down, staring at the ceiling. How could someone like him, who learned everything from YouTube, who played on a keyboard that sometimes made buzzing sounds, compete with musicians who had real training? But then he remembered how it felt on stage at the school event, how his hands found the melody even when he was nervous, and how the audience listened quietly. Maybe he wasn't like those other players. But that didn't mean he had no place at all. The next day, he signed up for the competition before his fear could change his mind. From that moment, his life took on a new rhythm. Every day after school, he practiced with more focus. He picked a piece that felt right, not too complex, not too simple. He wanted something that expressed what he felt inside. Some days were good. The melody flowed smoothly, and his fingers moved like they were guided by instinct. But other days were hard. Mistakes piled up, frustration built, and he wondered if he was wasting his time. The keyboard malfunctioned more often than he liked. Still, he kept going. Word about the competition spread through school faster than he expected. One afternoon, a group of students approached him. "We heard you joined the regional competition," one said. "Is that true?" He nodded quietly. A boy snorted. "But you're self-taught. Isn't that risky?" Another added, Those competitions have real judges. They'll notice every small mistake. He felt heat rise in his face. He tried to stay calm, but their words echoed his deepest fears. He simply replied, "I'll try my best," and walked away. Behind him, he heard someone whisper, "He's brave." Or crazy. He didn't know whether to feel embarrassed or proud. As the competition day grew closer, his nerves grew tighter. His mother tried to encourage him every evening, reminding him that the goal was not to win, but to learn and grow. Her words helped, but the pressure didn't fade completely. One day, during his usual practice at the community music room behind the school, something unexpected happened. As he was finishing a piece, an older man walked in. He wore simple clothes and carried a violin case. The boy assumed he was a caretaker or someone who used the room after him, but the man listened quietly until he finished. "You play with feeling," the man said gently. "Where did you learn?" The boy hesitated. Admitting he learned from YouTube always felt a little embarrassing. Still, he answered honestly. The man didn't laugh. Instead, he looked impressed. "That takes discipline," the man said. "Keep going." The boy thanked him and packed up his keyboard. He didn't think much of the encounter until days later. 2 days before the competition, he returned to the same music room. When he entered, the same man was there, tuning his violin. He greeted the boy with a nod. "I heard there is a competition coming up," the man said calmly. The boy nodded. The man adjusted his bow and said, "Would you like some advice?" The boy blinked in surprise. "You're a musician?" The man smiled. "I've spent many years teaching and performing. Not famous or anything, but I know enough to help someone who cares." The boy nodded shyly. "Yes, please." For the first time, he received in-person guidance. The man taught him small things, how to relax his shoulders, how to control his breathing, how to place his fingers more naturally. They weren't huge changes, but they made the boy feel more confident. "You already have emotion in your playing," the man said. "Technique can be improved with time, but emotion some people spend years trying to understand it. You already have it. Don't lose it." Those words became the boy's anchor. On the day of the competition, he woke up early, unable to sleep. His hands were cold. His stomach felt tight. His mother prepared breakfast, but he could barely eat. "You'll be fine," she said gently. "You've worked hard. That's what matters." He nodded, though worry still clung to him. At the community center, the halls were filled with nervous young musicians carrying polished instruments. Some practiced scales quickly. Others whispered with their teachers. A few wore formal outfits. He felt out of place in his simple clothes, holding his worn keyboard. A girl standing nearby whispered to her friend, "Who brings a keyboard to a competition? Don't they have pianos inside?" Her friend shrugged. "Maybe he doesn't know how these things work." His cheeks burned, but he stayed silent. Inside the performance room, a large grand piano sat under soft lights. It was bigger and more beautiful than anything he had ever touched. A staff member explained that contestants would play on the grand piano, not their own instruments. His heart dropped. He had never used one before. His keyboard at home didn't have the same weight, the same keys, the same feel. "How am I supposed to do this?" He whispered to himself, but his name was already on the list. Backing out now would hurt more than trying. He watched the performers before him. Some played quickly with perfect precision. Others played classical pieces he recognized from YouTube. The judges sat quietly, their faces serious. When his name was finally called, the room grew quiet. He stepped up slowly, feeling like every step echoed. Sitting at the grand piano felt surreal. The keys were heavier, colder, smoother. His fingers trembled. He closed his eyes and took the deep breath the violin man had taught him. When he pressed the first key, the sound was richer than anything he had ever heard. It scared him at first, the depth of it. But then he continued. The melody flowed gently. Not perfect, he hit a wrong note early on. But he kept going. The emotion guided his hands. He didn't try to copy anyone's style. He played in his own way, the way he had learned alone at home. As he reached the final notes, the room was silent. The judges didn't react immediately. That made him nervous. He stood, bowed awkwardly, and walked off the stage. He expected whispers, laughter, or at least dismissive looks. Instead, something surprising happened. People didn't laugh. They looked curious. Few even looked impressed. He didn't know if he would win anything. Maybe he wouldn't place at all. But as he sat down in the waiting area, he felt strangely calm. He had done something brave, something he never imagined himself doing. For the first time in his life, he felt like he wasn't just learning music. He was becoming a musician. Part 4 content will be written here. Closing parenthesis. He woke up before sunrise the next morning, long before the city outside even started to move. His mind wouldn't let him rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the judges' sharp comments from the masterclass. He heard people whispering behind him, saying he was only good for online covers. He heard the soft laughter when someone mentioned he learned everything from random videos, instead of real teachers. But he also heard something else, something quieter, something that didn't come from the outside world at all. It was his own voice, somewhere deep inside, reminding him why he started playing the piano in the first place. He didn't learn to impress anyone. He learned because music felt like a home he could build with his own hands. So that morning, he sat in front of the old digital piano in his small room and simply played. No cameras, no audience, no pressure. Just him and the keys. He played the same passage the judge told him was too weak. He played it again and again, trying to understand what was missing. Not copying, not repeating. Feeling hours passed without him noticing. The sun climbed up, filling his room with warm light that fell across the keyboard. His back ached, his fingers were tired, but a small, quiet determination kept him going. He realized something as he practiced. Watching videos wasn't a weakness. It wasn't something to hide. It was just a different way of learning. And if he wanted to go further, he didn't need to erase his past. He just needed to build from it. That day, during lunch, he made a big decision, something he never dared to think about before. He would apply for the international competition. The same one people said was impossible to enter without formal training. The same one where the world's best young pianists appeared every year. He knew people would laugh. He knew some might even call him foolish. But he also knew something else. No one ever reached anywhere great by waiting for permission. He didn't tell anyone at first. Not his classmates, not any of the critics he met in the masterclass, not even the few friends who supported his music quietly. He wanted this moment to belong to him alone. That night, he sat in front of his laptop and filled out the application form. His hands shook a little when he typed his name, not because he feared failure, but because the dream felt suddenly real. He attached the required recordings pieces he had spent weeks polishing and pressed submit. For a long moment, he stared at the screen after the confirmation message appeared. He felt scared, excited, hopeful, unsure all at once. But mostly, he felt proud. The next weeks were some of the hardest ones of his life. School, work, and practice piled up in a way that made him wonder how he would manage it all. But every time exhaustion pulled at him, he remembered the feeling of sitting in that masterclass, being judged as if he didn't belong. He wanted to prove something, not to them, but to himself. He studied music theory late at night, filling pages of notebooks with scales, chords, and patterns he never learned properly before. He watched advanced tutorials online, not copying them blindly, but breaking them down to truly understand them. He practiced techniques he once avoided because they were too difficult. Slowly, he felt something change. His playing gained a new depth. His hands moved with more confidence. His interpretations became clearer. He wasn't just playing the notes, he was speaking through them. One evening, when he played a piece he had struggled with for years, he finally felt it click. The room felt different, as if the music had wrapped around him like a warm blanket. He didn't smile right away. He simply sat there in the silence that followed, breathing deeply, knowing he had crossed some invisible line. Weeks later, he finally received an email from the competition board. At first, he didn't even want to open it. His hands trembled slightly. His heart beat too fast. He closed the laptop, took a breath, then opened it again. He clicked. The message loaded slowly, the way it always did when nervousness stretched time out, and then he saw it. Congratulations. You have been selected. He didn't read the rest right away. He felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but with a disbelief so heavy it felt unreal. He stood up, pacing the room, trying to understand what had just happened. He got in. He actually got in. He covered his face with his hands, letting out a shaky breath. All the late-night practice, all the quiet mornings, all the doubt he fought, suddenly made sense. But after the joy came another feeling, a deeper, heavier pressure. The kind that whispered, "Now you have to prove you belong there." The competition was still months away, but he felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. He knew the people he admired would be there. He knew judges with decades of experience would listen. He knew critics would watch, ready to compare him with those who trained in famous academies. He knew he would be the outsider. But for the first time, that didn't scare him. It pushed him forward. He created a strict schedule for himself. Early practice in the morning, schoolwork afterward, afternoon practice, study, practice again, rest, repeat. Each day felt long, but each one made him stronger. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed, when a piece refused to come together, when his fingers slipped, no matter how many times he repeated a passage, when he doubted his choices. But each time he stumbled, he remembered the voice inside him, the reason he started this journey. One evening, as he practiced a stormy, powerful piece, someone knocked softly on his door. It was his neighbor from downstairs, a quiet older man who rarely spoke much. He thought the man had come to complain about the noise, but instead, the man simply said, "I heard you're playing. It's getting strong. Keep going." Then he walked away. That small moment surprised him more than anything. It reminded him that people were listening, even those he didn't expect. And some of them weren't laughing at all. He pushed harder. He learned to control his breathing as he played. He learned to relax his shoulders. He learned to let the music move through him instead of trying to force it. His room became his world, a place where mistakes didn't define him but guided him. 2 weeks before the competition, he received the full schedule and rules. The event was massive. Competitors from different countries. Live audiences. Strict judging criteria. He read everything carefully, trying not to let the nerves get the better of him. On the last page, there was a simple line. All participants must arrive 1 day early for registration and sound check. It hit him then. He wasn't preparing anymore. He was going. He stared at his piano after reading it. The old keys looked almost familiar enough to calm him, but a part of him still trembled. Not in fear, just in anticipation. For years, he learned alone. And soon, he would walk into a room where the world's most skilled young pianists gathered. He sat down and placed his fingers on the keys. He didn't start with a warm-up. He didn't start with the competition pieces. He played something simple, something he learned long ago from a video online. The melody was soft, slow, almost childlike. But it meant everything. It was where his story had started, long before anyone knew he wanted to play. And as he played, something inside him settled. He felt ready. He didn't know what would happen at the competition. He didn't know how the judges would react, or how strong the other competitors would be. But he knew one thing with certainty. He belonged on that stage because he had worked for it, because he had earned it, because music wasn't about where you started. It was about how far you were willing to go. Part 5 content will be written here. Closing parenthesis. He arrived at the competition venue early in the morning, long before the hall filled with people. The building looked grand from the outside, almost like a place where history lived inside the walls. Tall windows stretched up to the ceiling, and the entrance doors were polished so well they reflected the sunlight. For a moment, he just stood there quietly, trying to steady his breathing. He had imagined this moment so many times, but now that he was here, it felt unreal. He wasn't thinking about the critics anymore, or the classmates who once laughed at the way he learned. None of that mattered now. All he could think about was standing on that stage and letting the music speak for him. When he walked inside, he saw other competitors sitting or warming up. Some were practicing finger exercises. Some were speaking softly with their teachers. Some stood with their families. He didn't have anyone with him, and for a brief second, he felt the weight of that loneliness. But then he remembered something his neighbor said, that his playing had grown strong. And he remembered every hour of practice, every moment of doubt he pushed through, and every step that brought him here. A staff member guided everyone to the registration desk. When he gave his name, the woman behind the counter checked it off with a warm smile and handed him a small badge. He held it in his hand longer than he expected, reading the printed label over and over. Seeing his name next to the word competitor made everything feel real. After registration, the participants were taken inside the main hall for sound check. When he stepped inside, he stopped walking for a moment. The hall was huge, with rows of seats that stretched far back. The stage lights cast a soft glow across the polished wooden floor. At the center stood the grand piano, shining, elegant, almost intimidating. He walked slowly to it. Every step echoed slightly in the quiet hall. When he finally reached the piano, he placed his fingers on the keys, but didn't press them yet. He closed his eyes and took a long breath. Then he began to play. His first notes were gentle. The hall responded with a beautiful, natural echo that made the sound feel alive. He played through the opening section of his competition piece, focusing on clarity, balance, and calmness. The keys felt different from the ones he practiced on at home, richer, fuller, more sensitive. It made him nervous at first, but as he continued, the music settled into him the way it always did. A few staff members nodded approvingly as he finished the short sound check. He stepped off the stage slowly, feeling a mix of relief and renewed pressure. The competition hadn't even started yet, and already his heart felt heavy. When the event officially began, the hall filled with people. Judges sat at a long table near the front, each with a stern but focused expression. Cameras were set up to record the performances. Audience members whispered quietly while waiting for their favorite players. He sat backstage, listening to the competitors before him. Some played with incredible speed. Some played with perfect precision. Some played with the confidence of those who had been trained since childhood. Every time someone finished a strong performance, his stomach tightened slightly. His palms felt sweaty, and he wiped them on his clothes. He kept telling himself that he wasn't here to defeat anyone. He was here because music had carried him this far. Finally, his name was called. He stood slowly, walked toward the stage entrance, and took one last deep breath before stepping out. The bright lights hit him instantly, making it hard to see the audience clearly. But he didn't need to see their faces. He only needed to focus on the piano. He sat down, adjusted the bench, placed his hands gently on his lap, and waited a moment just to feel the stillness around him. Then he played. The first notes floated softly through the hall. They weren't loud or showy. They were calm, delicate, almost like he was telling a secret only the piano could understand. As he continued, the piece began to grow. The quiet melody turned into something deeper, stronger. His hands moved with passion, not rushing, not hesitating, simply speaking in a language he had learned through persistence. The audience leaned in. Even the judges seemed to straighten in their seats. He didn't think about the videos he learned from, or the comments that once hurt him. He didn't think about whether he looked professional enough or skilled enough compared to the others. He thought about the nights he played alone, the mornings he woke early to practice, the feeling of discovering something new every time he pressed a key. His emotions flowed into every note. When the music grew soft, his fingers touched the keys like he was handling something fragile. When the music exploded into its powerful sections, he let himself go, completely trusting the strength in his hands and the training he had built on his own. He reached the final part of the piece, and the hall seemed to hold its breath. With each line, with each chord, he felt his heart speak louder than the notes themselves. And when he finally reached the last phrase, he slowed gently, letting the sound fade naturally into silence. For a moment after he finished, everything was completely still. No one moved. No one even whispered. Then the applause began. It started with a few people near the front, then spread quickly until the entire hall was clapping. Some audience members even stood. The sound washed over him like a wave, and he felt warmth rise in his chest. He stood up, bowed respectfully, and walked off the stage with trembling hands, not from fear, but from the overwhelming rush of everything he had just experienced. Backstage, he sat alone for a moment, letting his heart slow down. He had no idea what the judges would think. He had no idea if he would win anything. But he knew one thing clearly. He had played with honesty. He had played with heart. When the judges finished reviewing all performances, everyone gathered in the hall for the results. His hands were shaking again, but this time he didn't try to hide it. It was impossible not to feel nervous. The host stepped onto the stage with a small envelope. Everyone leaned forward. He took a slow breath. Then the host announced, "The winner of this year's international competition is..." A quiet pause. His name. It felt like the world froze for a moment. He blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. The people around him looked at him with wide eyes. Then the applause erupted again, even louder than before. He walked to the stage with unsteady steps. The trophy felt heavy in his hands, not because of its size, but because of what it meant. He looked out at the audience, then at the judges who nodded with approval. One of the judges approached him afterward and said, "Your performance had something rare. Technique can be taught. Feeling cannot. You played with a soul that many chase their whole lives." He didn't know what to say. His throat tightened with emotion. As he left the hall that night, the cool air outside felt different, lighter, warmer somehow. He didn't care about the critics anymore. He didn't care about anyone who once doubted him. He had proved to himself that dreams weren't meant only for those who had perfect circumstances. Dreams belonged to those who refused to give up. And as he walked back toward his hotel, holding the trophy close, he knew something for certain. He had started as a boy, learning from simple online videos. But he had arrived as a pianist the world could no longer ignore.